Hey guys, it's Abby. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I have some paranormal TikTok storytime videos to share with you. All of these videos are coinciding with a trend that you have probably seen going around. This trend is started by the user Audacity, who asks people to tell a ghost story that is completely unbelievable, but is entirely true. And every single stitch I've seen of this video is insane. So today I will be sharing 8 of my favorite TikToks from this trend. If you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new here, click the subscribe button down below and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And other than that, let's just get right on into the video. I am going to be starting off this video with the original story from the user Audacity herself. In her ghost story, she tells us about a time as a kid where she would frequently play with a Ouija board in an attempt to communicate with an entity that they believed was in the basement. As she's retelling the story, she mentions that there were times that all of their hands would be off the planchette and it would still be moving.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8 years old, my family and I moved to a small town in the Midwest, and it was a farm town. It was built in like the early 1800s. I think it was part of like the Homestead Act or something. It was, had a bunch of acres, a barn that had burnt down. Like, it was an active farm back then. Lots of history. People definitely passed away on the property, that we knew for sure. And man, it wasn't like very obvious as a child. I was super intuitive and I didn't know what to do with that intuition, so I naturally got a Ouija board. And of course I dragged along my best friend and my sister and a couple other friends on this Ouija board journey, where we would go and sit at the top of the stairs to the basement, and we would turn all the lights off and turn candles on and then ask this thing questions, and it responded. And I don't tell people this story, it sounds psycho. The fact that other people are there to verify all of these things and validate gives me inner peace, but I don't tell people. But it worked. And unlike what I thought would happen when it would move, even when we'd lift all of our hands off of it, it's still moving, is how aggressively it moved. It wasn't gentle, it was like very sharp. And so much time would pass when we were in there talking to this entity as well. Like, we would think 10 minutes went by and it would be 2 hours. Like, insane. Being little kids, we wanted to know questions and answers like, who are we gonna marry when we grow up? Or how many kids are we gonna have? Or just questions like that. And every single time we start, it would give us answers at first, like, and it would tell us about itself. We would say, like, what's your name? And it would just say demon, D-E-M-O-N, like, over and over again. When we would ask questions about me, at first it would like give us answers, and then it would just spell bitch repeatedly, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H. Horrifying, like any question about me. Also, sorry if I seem lackluster, I already told this whole story and it deleted. It was so freaky. We're also having like visuals of like hands reaching towards the planchette, like in the candlelight flicker. This entity gave us details saying that it was like buried in the cemetery, a cemetery that was like local, like the name was legit. It gave us like, I think it either gave us a plot number or it was just like the last name, and we did go there and what we found was crazy.
If there is one thing about me, I do not mess around with Ouija boards. Absolutely not. Like, I also, like, as fascinated as I am by ghosts and that world, I don't mess around with any of it. I do not try and summon things. I do not try and conjure things. I do not try and contact anything. That's none of my business. I will enjoy the content, but like from a distance. I want nothing to do with any of that. I used to mess around with that stuff as a child, and I ended up haunting my old home. And I've since sworn off touching a Ouija board or, trying to summon anything. But that is what a Ouija board is. You are inviting things in that you should not be inviting in. You don't know who you're talking to. And even if you say goodbye, there is no guarantee that whatever it is will leave you alone. Fortunately, when I moved from my old house, whatever it was apparently stayed at the house because I haven't had any experiences since. But you never know. I know there are people that have things stuck with them and not just attached to a house where they can move away from. And hearing the poster talk about being young and playing with a Ouija board just gives me so many flashbacks, and freaks me out because seriously, I know firsthand how real that stuff is, and it's dangerous. That aside, a big thank you to this girl for starting this wonderful trend. I am very excited to share with you all of the other stories that she has inspired people to tell. Our next story is by the user Tati Scary Stories. Now, she is a creator who shares a lot about scary and ghostly stories, and she tells us that this encounter actually is what inspired her to talk about all these things and made her so fascinated with the paranormal. Tati says that when she was a child, her grandma sent her down the street to the corner store to get some more butter, and on the way she ran into a classmate, and he asked if he could join her for the rest of the walk to the corner store. So she agreed. They walked together, they started walking back, and at some point he says that he cannot continue on the rest of the walk with her, so they part ways and she heads home by herself. The next morning, her grandma tells her that one of her friends from school has been killed. When she asks who, her grandma says it was the boy that she had seen on the way to the corner store the day before. However, even though they had found his body that day, he had not been alive since the day before she saw him.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
So this is the story that literally started it all. This is the reason why I talk about all the crazy things that I talk about on here. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, my grandmother sent me to the store to buy some butter. I grew up in Colombia. In Colombia, you can just go to the corner store and get either a full stick of butter or like a half a stick of butter. This was on a Saturday, which is extremely important to the story. As I'm making my way over to the corner store, I run into one of my friends from school. We start talking and chatting. Mind you, I'm like 6 or 7. He asked if he can follow me the rest of the way to the store. I told him, of course. We get to the corner store, I get the butter. He walks me back. As he's walking me back, we get to a certain point where he tells me that he can no longer follow. I don't think anything of it, and I continue on home and go on about my day. The next morning, Sunday, my grandma wakes me up and tells me that one of my friends from school had been unalived. I asked her who, and she tells me that it's that same little boy that I had run into the day before. She tells me that he had gone missing on Friday and his body was found Sunday, but that he had been already gone since like Friday night. I tell her that's impossible, being that I just saw him the day before. I mean, my grandma is open to all of these things, so she believed me that I did in fact see him, but who I saw was clearly not him in the physical form. But to this day, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. Like, me seeing him was so clear and was literally like me being around just another person, and the fact that he was already gone, it just completely blows my mind.
How crazy is that? Like, you saw someone, you were with someone, but they weren't even alive anymore at that time. I don't even know how you wrap your head around that, especially as a child. That would make me feel like I'm going absolutely insane. But part of me wonders if, I don't know the rest of the story, but part of me wonders if maybe somehow he was there as like a form of protection, like escorting her to and from the store at a certain point. I feel like there had to be some kind of a reason why he showed up and spent time with her and walked with her. But I just don't know what it is. Like, that is such a crazy thing to experience. And obviously it really affected her if she has now taken on a fascination with this kind of thing because of it. And I don't blame her. Like, that is a truly crazy story. Our next TikTok is by the user Shauna Curdy, and she tells yet another Ouija board story. She says, as a teenager, her and her at the time boyfriend were curious about the Ouija board, as I feel like it seems many people are, again, myself included. They go to Toys R Us and buy a Ouija board. They bring it to her house, and one night they decide to play it. They play the Ouija board and have a frightening experience, and the boyfriend decides that he just needs to go home, leaving her there in her room, which is in the basement, by herself. She ends up having weird experiences all night long. And after that, says that the basement just felt eerie and different. There was like a negative entity down there. And she would frequently see a black cat in her basement, when she never had a black cat. And it wasn't just her who noticed this. Other family members started noticing it as well. And it has been years and years since this happened. She is a full-grown woman, but her family still has that house, and to this day, she says the basement still does not feel right.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
This isn't like the stuff that I normally post, but I really want to do this trend. I actually have a lot of ghost stories from my life, but this particular one is also about the Ouija board, like the original poster. So I was 17 years old and I had my first like long-term boyfriend. And we were both really curious about the Ouija board. We had been told stories growing up, but we wanted to find out for ourselves. And so one night, I had purchased a Ouija board from Toys R Us, which is crazy to think about, that you can just buy this portal at a kid's store that no longer exists. Anyway, I'm gonna go on tangents because that's how I am, and I'm gonna try not to. I buy this Ouija board and he comes over to my house. I'm 17 years old. There are rules for the house. He was allowed to be in my room, but the door had to remain open at all times. And he usually had to leave by like 10 o'clock at night or something like that. Also, I was told throughout my life a couple of times that I was not allowed to play the Ouija board in my dad's house. So now that you know that, let's continue. My dad worked graveyard shift at the time. So he went to work and I was a good kid and I was trusted to just do what I was supposed to do. But this night I didn't. We were gonna find out if this Ouija board really worked. So everyone went to bed. It was definitely after 10 o'clock at night and my dad's at work, and we go down in my room, and my room was in the basement. And the way that you would get to my room is you would go down the stairs and it would lead you into this big living room. And back in the left corner of the living room was the door to my bedroom. And the only light switch for the living room was right after you came down the stairs and you first entered. So I would have to turn off the lights and run through a dark living room every night when I went to my room. And when I got up in the morning, I'd have to turn off the lights in my bedroom and walk through a dark living room up the dark stairs. Just keep that in mind. So we're down in my room in the basement and we're setting up the Ouija board, and we set it up on my bed and we're sitting cross-legged and we light candles and we turn off all the lights. I don't remember reading the instructions because apparently it was really important to say goodbye. I'll get to that. So we set it all up. We're sitting cross-legged. We both put like 2 fingers on the planchette, like really, really, really lightly. We decide we're going to focus and meditate on the question, will anybody talk to us? So we do. And it takes a long time. Our hands would get tired. We'd have to like shake them out, but we just stayed like in this mental state that we were in, and we would chant it out loud or just internally, will anybody talk to us? After about 30 minutes, the planchette started to vibrate under our fingers. And I started to feel at that time a weird energy starting to flow through my body. And the planchette slowly started to make its way over to the word yes. And the stronger that the planchette moved, or the faster it moved, the stronger I felt this strange, uncomfortable energy within my body. So we both look at each other like, oh my gosh, holy shit, this is real. And then we decide we're going to ask if it's a spirit who's talking to us. So we do. And the planchette moves a little faster this time, and it leaves the word yes and circles right back around to it. At this point, this energy in my body is just flinging from head to toe through me, and it almost feels the way I would imagine the static on an old television set when you go to a channel that doesn't exist. That's kind of what it felt like this horrible static just flinging through my body. Never felt it before or since. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure about this. And we decide to ask, are you nice? Because of course I need to know, right? And obviously it shoots over even faster this time to the word no. And this is where I decide I'm done. So I'm like, that's it. And I go to grab the board, and the board will not move. It feels like someone's standing on the board because I'm yanking on it and it's not moving. And I still to this day, when I think about it, my logical mind is like, did that happen? But yes, it happened. And finally, on like my 5th yank, I threw my whole body into it, and it suddenly felt like something had stepped off of the board because the board just flew up into the air. I slammed it down into the box. My boyfriend was just pale as a ghost, and he's looking at me wide-eyed, and he's like, I need to go home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't leave me here. I'm so scared. And he's like, no, I really gotta go. And I'm like, oh crap. So I take him upstairs, walk him out of the house, lock the doors behind him, go back down into my room. But this is where it gets really messed up. My room does not feel like my room. And I know that sounds crazy because obviously it was my room. It was all my stuff and everything. But I felt like I had stepped into a parallel universe, and I was so far away from all that I knew that was comfortable and good, and like I just felt so far away from everything, even though my family was right upstairs sleeping. In some ways, I've never been so scared in my life. And I just felt so detached and so far away from the rest of the house. And my room didn't feel like my room. And I didn't sleep that night. I'm not religious, but I grabbed the Bible because I didn't know what else to do. And I just laid there with the lights on. I guess I drifted in and out of sleep somehow, but I slept with the lights on in my room for like a week. It took a couple weeks for my room to start to feel like I could be in it comfortably and I could actually spend substantial amount of time in it, which sucked because my room before that was like my sanctuary and I really just messed it all up. I did not tell my parents because I didn't want to get in trouble, but stuff started to happen. So that night when I was done with the Ouija board, I had set it outside of my bedroom door on top of this bookshelf. And in the morning when I would get up for school, I would open my door into the dark living room and I would see the silhouette of a black cat run from the light into the dark really fast. And I would like blink and shake it off and think that it was just, my mind playing tricks on me. And I would tell myself I just hyped it all up in my head and I made myself all freaked out because I was trying to rationalize what I had done to the house. I didn't want to accept that I really haunted it or that I really changed things or I invited something in. But clearly I did, because about a month after me seeing like the black cat, I'm upstairs at the dinner table and my young sibling, my sister, she was like 7 or 8 at the time, out of nowhere, she goes, I keep seeing a black cat in the basement. And I'm like, oh my God, it's real. I really did this. And the basement continues to feel weird and messed up. And then another month passes. And then my dad says to me, I'm really upset because our basement feels really funky. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, when I bought this house, one of the reasons I picked it was because the energy was really nice. And he was like, there was no negative vibes in the house. And now for some reason, when I go into the basement, it feels so messed up. Like it is so bad. And he's like, and I don't know why. And pretty sure I started to cry and I told him and I was like, oh my God, I have to tell you something. Me and my boyfriend played the Ouija board in my room and it's haunted now and nothing feels right. And he's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no. And he's like, why didn't you ask for help earlier? And I'm like, because I was scared of you. And he's like, I'm so scary. I'm scarier than like an evil spirit in your room. And I'm like, yes. So my stepmom threw the Ouija board away and stuff kind of started to calm down after that. But to be honest, even though the house feels a lot better and the basement isn't nearly as scary as it was, it's never fully gone all the way back to the way it was before I played the Ouija board. And occasionally weird things do happen in that house, not negative feeling so much like around that time. But yeah, I don't recommend Ouija boards. And if you do play, always make sure you say goodbye.
First of all, let this be another testament as to why you should not mess around with Ouija boards. There's just so many bad signs in this whole video. But one thing I literally cannot believe is the fact that she says she's yanking on the board and it will not come up. The first time I heard this, I was like tearing up at the thought of like, you're so scared in this basement after contacting someone you don't want to contact. You're trying to like shut the whole thing down and the board is like being held down by some negative energy. I really don't know how she went to bed that night. Like, again, bringing it back to my own experience, one of the times I played the Ouija board was at a friend's house at a sleepover. Shocker. And that night, we went to bed around like 3:30, 4 in the morning after playing the Ouija board and having some pretty weird experiences during that. Honestly, maybe I'll have to make a video one day with all of my like ghostly encounters from back in the day. That night, after everything we experienced, I could not for the life of me fall asleep. I was curled up in like a little, like one of those chairs that's kind of like, it's like one of those like circle chairs. I was curled up in one of those watching Gossip Girl until the sun came up because I could not close my eyes. I was afraid of what was going to happen the second my eyes closed. So the fact that she was able to go in that room by herself and like, exist there normally ever again, even if it took some time, I really don't know how she did that. Not to mention that me, at my grown age of 23, am still frightened by basements. So that adds another layer of scariness to this, is that her bedroom's in the haunted basement. I don't know. I think it really is a testament to what kind of damage can be done in just one Ouija board session, with the fact that years later, her basement has still never returned to its original state. Our next TikTok is by the user The Golden Mirrors. This user, named Meg, shares about a time where she goes to a bachelorette party in the middle of the woods in Oregon at an Airbnb. And this Airbnb has something truly evil inside of it. She shares about the events of the trip, the haunted upstairs loft that has an entity in it that will not allow her to go upstairs. The way this entity is able to change people's personalities and moods, and how the whole weekend was a game of all the bridesmaids and guests trying to keep the bride from noticing that anything was wrong. And on the way out the door, They check the guest book, and it turns out they are not the only ones who have had such horrifying experiences here.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I live in Oregon, and a friend of mine was having her bachelorette party at a cabin in the woods at the base of a very well-known mountain. I was looking forward to going. A lot of people I care about were going to be on that trip, and I thought it sounded like a really fun weekend just to get away and be in nature. And the first thing that happened when I left my house and I was just on the outskirts of town, I got such a strong feeling to turn around and grab some cleansing tools like sage, Palo Santo, whatever I had on hand. And it was so strong, I turned the car around, went home. My husband's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I just had to use the bathroom and I don't want to use the gas station." Totally fed him a line because I didn't want him to get worried. It was a really pleasant drive up there, a couple of hours. You're at least in the forest for, I'd say, 45 to 50 minutes before you find this house. This house. As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. Two other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details. And I walked in, and my two friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky, and I don't like it, and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at, and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my two friends in the kitchen are like, "Hey Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here." I'm like, "Yeah, how are you guys doing?" They're like, "We're great." And I'm like, "Yeah, other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time." And they were like, "Oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought," because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here, and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like, do not go any further. My friend said, "That's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here." And we were, they were just checking out the house, and they went up into that weird little loft attic area, and they were like, "Nope, no further." This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space, and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there, and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, "Was the door open when you guys went up there?" The crawl space door had been opened, and none of us had been up there. So that night, we're just kind of settling into the house, settling into the weekend, trying to figure out what's on the agenda, trying to have a good time. But if you're sensitive, you can just tell from these pictures, the place just had a creepy vibe. Those two same friends are sleeping in this room, and I am sleeping down here, downstairs, alone on a pull-out couch. First thing we notice is the incredible amount of dead insects all over the floor and even in the sheet. That night, one of my friends had her electronics go crazy at 3 a.m. I felt such a heavy layer of darkness. The first night I tried to go to sleep downstairs here on that pull-out couch, I felt like things were staring at me, circling me. I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband, like, "What are you doing?" But I got this very clear message: you need to stay, and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire, and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. Next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces, coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened. At this point, I am getting so drained physically and feeling so sick, I need to go lie down. I'm alone in the house again, but I'm watching everybody from outside these windows where I'm at. Gosh, I can't point. And at this point, I'm just praying. Like, I'm here for a reason. These are people that I really care about and love, and I do not want to leave them here because I feel like I can be more helpful trying to hold off whatever this thing is. I did eventually run out to a corner store to test and make sure that the physical symptoms I was experiencing were really tied to the house and not just something going on with me. And as soon as I left the house, I felt so much better. But I had to come back. People were having personality changes while at the house. Like, they would start to withdraw, go take a shower, try and like snap out of it because they just felt something come over them. What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not, nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with a D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping. And what's odd is that the safe places in the house would change depending on the time of day. It's like the rooms would just start to feel off. Another person said they were almost picking up on the presence of a man like an older man. I wasn't picking up on a person, dead or alive, definitely a thing. The second night, one of my friends and I were just so uncomfortable about the idea of going to sleep that we just stayed up kind of deliriously talking to each other until, God, it must have been close to 4 a.m. just to not be asleep and unconscious in that environment. What's so weird and actually kind of miraculous if you think about it is that the bride was not affected. She was the only one out of all of us who had no idea what was going on because she was in her soon to be wed splendor, and also this particular person has an incredible amount of spiritual protection around her. So we were all really grateful for that, and we kind of like whisper about what happened to you last night and this happened to me in the bathroom earlier, and we were all just kind of keeping it out of the realm of awareness of the bride, fortunately. By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create your own crepe kind of buffet line, and we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in, and I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read. If anybody knows who this was, I would love to talk to you about your experience. This one's a little weird. I think some dude had a freaky experience and then leaned into the weirdness and hopefully just exaggerated because they didn't know what to make of it. We all stood outside of that house and we held hands in a circle, and I kind of led everybody through a grounding and protective and clearing exercise because it was so vile. The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road, and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to run in and we're going to take care of it." When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody's going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing because up until that point I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
I find it so interesting that the original two guests specifically were waiting for her to show up to see her reaction because they knew that if there was something for them to worry about, that she'd be the one to figure it out. I just really don't like the idea of something evil hiding up in the loft and just like staring down on everyone. But also, I mean, come on, like a cabin in the woods. A cabin in the woods. Really. I guess that is one thing about Airbnbs or even hotels, I guess. It's just the amount of different energies going in and out of there, people-wise. You never know who's going to bring something and just leave it there for the next person to have to deal with. I really wish someone would investigate the property, honestly. If that many crazy things were happening over that short of a period of time, I really would love to see someone investigate this place and just see what's going on there. She posted part 2 sharing about how she did cleanse the space, although it didn't obviously do too much. And when she came down from the loft after cleansing it, people were appalled at how she looked because she just did not look well.
I completely forgot to mention this, but yes, I did use the cleansing tools the first night. Not a whole lot happened. But if anything, I might have just pissed it off. I knew going into it that I wasn't going to be removing or clearing anything. That was never my intention. And I knew that that wouldn't be permissible, if that makes sense. I just had to try and keep it over here until we were done with the space for that weekend. But the second night after I cleared with smoke, I came downstairs from the loft area and one of my friends was like, are you okay? You look like you're going to pass out. I was covered in sweat. My heart was pounding. I was drenched. I don't know if it was from running higher healing frequencies or just kind of going toe to toe with an energetic force that was just so different from me. And it was an Airbnb.
I think the fact that she went through all that energy to cleanse and it was so draining on her personally and pretty much did nothing tells you how strong of an energy this entity is. And again, like she said, it is not human. It is something that is probably pure evil. And it makes me wonder if the cleansing did anything. And if it did do something, I wonder how worse it could have been had she not cleansed. The third and final TikTok of this series that I am going to be sharing with you, she responds to a comment where the person recognizes the listing photo she shared in her original TikTok and says that they stayed there as well and had a horrifying experience. They said that even being there with 50 people, they still felt unbelievably uncomfortable. She then mentions that people are trying to find out where this place is because they want to stay there themselves, and she says that absolutely nobody should be seeking this place out to go stay there. Personally, I would never go and stay there. Selfishly, I hope some people do figure out where it is and go and stay there and, you know, maybe give us a little TikTok investigation series. Like, I genuinely am so fascinated by this house. I would love for someone to investigate it and post about it. I really think that the people would be interested in seeing such a thing. So, if you guys ever come across a video investigating said house, please tag me in it. And if you were watching this and happen to go and investigate said house, please let me know, because I'm fascinated. I'm really intrigued.
This is my honest to God real-time reaction to that. I am covered in goosebumps. That house, I would not go back. Like, there's no amount of money that could make me go back and stay there. And you said in a previous comment that there were like 50 of you. There's no amount of people that would make you feel safe in that house. I cannot believe the crawl space door opened for you guys too. I'm speechless. To the people who have sent me messages or commented, where's that house? Like, I want to go, I want to stay there. Like, do not stay there. You don't even have to be a sensitive or an intuitive to have your health affected by this thing. It's not a dead person, it's not a demon, but it is not human and it's not safe.
Our next TikTok is by the user Tips Ghost Talk. She tells us about the time she goes to stay with the new girl in school at her parents' log cabin in the middle of nowhere. They are hanging out and there is just weird experience after weird experience. She keeps hearing these scary stories about this woman with claws. She is feeling very unsettled, doesn't want to stay here anymore, and is really hoping for a way home, to the point where she plans to call her mom and make up an excuse why she has to go home so she doesn't have to stay the night. But she then finds out that the phone lines are magically down and is forced to stay the night. Well, she stays the night in a bunk bed with this girl and her sister. The girl is on the bottom bunk, Tiff is in the middle bunk, and her sister is on the top bunk. In the middle of the night, a woman comes out from below the bottom bunk and starts scratching at her friend's legs, and eventually disappears back below the bed.
That sounds completely unbelievable, but
This is a story I swear I would never tell or talk about again, but my mom really wants me to tell it, so here we go. When I was in 5th grade, a new girl came to our school, and I didn't know her at all, but my mom and dad knew her mom and dad. They wanted me to like hang out with her. Well, she was in 6th grade. She was a year older than me, and she had 2 younger sisters, and she was there like 2 weeks or something like that, and they set up like a slumber party sleepover thing or whatever. I get over to her house, but first let me add, okay, her house was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was a log cabin that her dad had built, and it was like this 2-story lofty type cabin thing, and her parents were upstairs, but her dad had made like in the girls' room like built-in bunk beds in the wall, so they were like 3 high, right? And the little sister was going to sleep in the floor and I was going to sleep in the middle, right? So you had to like climb the ladder on the outside of the beds and then like climb into the bed, which I thought was cool, you know, I was fine with it. But immediately when I got to the house that day, it was like heavy, and it kind of felt like something was like the air was thick or something. So she kept acting weird the whole time that I was there, and she would like look to the left and right and back and forth, and I'm like, what are you looking at? And she's like, oh, nothing. And then the little sister goes, she sees this woman. Ghosts weren't like new to me, but I knew this didn't feel like a ghost. It felt like something else. I would see like this dark shadow like show up and then like go away, and then around the corner I saw like these fingers come around the edge and then go like this, like around the door frame, but they weren't like regular fingers. They were like these really elongated black, like, and the nails weren't pointy. They were longer, but they looked like they had been like digging in something. They were like a brown dirt. This was like scary, whatever it was, right? So I'm already like planning my escape. Like I'm already like, okay, I'm gonna wait till bedtime and I'm gonna call my mom and I'm gonna say I'm sick or something so she has to come and get me. We were out there, like I said, in the middle of nowhere, and then her dad was like, oh man, the phones are messed up again, and he comes in for like dinner, and I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean the phones are messed up? So this was like 91, 92, I guess, something like that. And he's like, yeah, they get down sometimes. And I'm like, well, what if I need to go home? And he said, well, you know, I'll take you home. You know, it's fine. It's fine if you need to go home. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm stuck out here, right? Like I'm not going to be like, hey, I need you to take me home, because my dad would have like ripped me a new one. Like, y'all know that he was mean, and he would have been so mad if I would have made this guy bring me home for nothing, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to stay here. Well, that night we go to get into bed and she has jeans on. And I'm like, why are you sleeping in jeans? And she said, because I can't feel her scratch my legs in jeans. I'm like, Phil, who? What do you mean? Who? The little sister goes, the woman, the girl that she sees, scratches her legs at night. And I'm like, oh my God. You know, like, oh my God, what do you mean? Well, is she going to try to scratch my legs? And she said, no, because you're in the middle bunk. She only gets mine. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, right? You've got to be kidding me. Well, we play games, we do whatever. And the whole time I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to see this woman. I've already like seen her hands. Like, what am I going to do? And climb up. We go to get in bed. I'm not tired at all, like not at all. And all I can think about is this woman, right? Like, why is my friend in jeans to keep from feeling her hands? Like, what is going to happen? And under the bottom bed, there was like a nook thing, you know, for like storage or whatever. So something could get under that. And I'm like, oh, you know, so I climb up this ladder thing. I'm getting like sweaty just talking. I'm getting like red just talking about it. That was horrible. I climb up the ladder. I get in the middle bunk. So I'm trapped. It felt like I was in a coffin or something, you know, because the bed was above me and there was a bed below me. So I'm in this box in the wall. And I'm like, I can't. I was having like a panic attack. I'm like, oh my God, I can't sleep in here. They had it total darkness, no noise, no anything but fear, right? The only thing I could hear was like my heart slamming in my chest and like my ears were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, I'm like, oh my God. Then I hear like the bottom bunk, like creak, you know, what's happening down there. And instead of just like not looking, like curiosity, you know, got the best of me. So I lean over, y'all, and this thing is like leaned over her. It's not in the bed with her, but it's like if it was kneeling beside her, and it's just going like dragging down her jeans. It sounded like that, you know, like dragging down jeans. So I'm looking down at this thing, hearing this, and then I look at my friend, and my friend's just like that. She goes. So I freeze, right? So this goes on for a long time. And with me still peeking over the side, like looking, and you hear like, and then she just stops and then like retreats and sucks back under that bottom bunk. Turns out they had a Ouija board in that nook underneath the bed that she had made, a homemade Ouija board underneath the bed. Horrible, horrible. I have never been so scared in my life. Let's just say I made it through the night. First thing in the morning, I was like, I'm ready to go. Because my mom wasn't supposed to come get me till like noon. This was like 9 o'clock. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I don't feel too good. Can you just take me home? I didn't care at that point what my dad said or did. I wanted to get the hell out of that log cabin in the woods. So he takes me home. I tell my mom. And she's like, well, you don't have to go back again. I'm like, no, I'm never going back.
I do not think that was a real woman. I don't think that was a spirit of a woman that passed. I don't think that was any kind of human at all. I think it very clearly was some kind of a negative entity. I'm curious as to why the girls never like told their parents, really. I like cannot believe the fact that the girls just like put up with this and act like it's completely normal. I'm also disturbed by the thought of having to wear jeans to bed. I mean, that does not sound appealing whatsoever. And again, I want to know more, like, how did this happen? Especially if her dad built the house. Where did this entity come from and what does it want? Now, obviously the story took place a long time ago because she is a full-grown adult now and she says this happened when she was in 5th grade. But I really wish there was a conclusion of like what ended up happening. Did the girls ever get rid of this entity? Did it continue on to adulthood? What happened here? Like, I have a lot of questions because this is just such an insane story and such an insane experience. I honestly don't think I could ever be friends with that girl again after witnessing that. No, thank you. I want no part in that. Our next TikTok is by the user Ray Hammy. She shares a story about when she first gets to college in Alabama. She really wants to make friends, especially with this boy that she had a crush on. So one night when he asks her to go out to some secret location to party with him and his friends, she of course agrees. She ends up being led out to a cemetery in the middle of nowhere. And she says that this whole time they're out there, she is just unbelievably uncomfortable. She eventually gets back in the car and waits for everyone to be done, you know, partying and doing what college kids do, when all of a sudden everyone starts running back to their cars, like full speed, needing to get out of there immediately, saying that they heard people running towards them in the forest. Now that's obviously freaky enough as it is, but after this experience, she finds herself haunted by an unknown entity, and she keeps experiencing the most frightening things. These next 2 TikToks I'm going to show you, it's a 2-parter of her story time. I'm going to speed them up just a bit because they are pretty long, so if it sounds a little sped up, that's why. But I first watched these videos in real time and I was hooked for the entirety of both of these videos.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
So before I tell the story, just know I was young. I was young and I was dumb, and I also was trying to fit in, okay? So, freshman year of college, just moved, first like 2 weeks in the dorm, just moved in. I met this guy I really liked, and he had already had like a really large group of friends at the college. So one night he texted me, he's like, hey, me and a bunch of like people, we're gonna go hang out and, you know, smoke and drink and stuff. Do you wanna come? And I really liked him. So I was like, oh my gosh, yes, of course I'm gonna come. So we roll out, it's like 3 or 4 cars, there's like 12 of us. We're rolling in deep, right? And I'm like, okay, where are we going? He's like, oh, I'm gonna take you to this spot. You know, we've been coming here the last couple of days and everything. It's a really cool spot to hang out because of course you can't do that stuff in the dorm room. So me, I'm just like happy to ride. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've made friends already. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. And context, it's like 11 o'clock at night. It's super, super dark and it's cloudy. So we're riding out. We leave the college. We're riding out for a while. Like we're going way out there. And I'm like, where are we going? So finally we come to like this really long road, and there's nothing but like woods surrounding us. It's just one singular road in woods. It's like pitch black. We're riding down this road and we come to this like clearing, and there's one street light. And I'm like, where are we? And so I'm like pulling into the spot, following other cars. And as our headlight like shines on this clearing, I see that it's a graveyard. And I'm trying to be cool about it. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm being too superstitious. Like I'm not trying to, seem stuck up to these new friends I'm trying to make, first year college, trying to like get in where I fit in. So by the time we get there, there's already a couple of cars there. There's already people hanging out. And the people who rode with us, like in the backseat, they get out. And then the guy that I liked, he's riding up front with me. He gets out. And then I open my door. The moment I open my door, there is this huge gust of cold wind. Mind you, it's August in South Alabama. It's hot. There's this huge gust of cold wind. And then the whole forest surrounding us, the woods, gets completely silent. We're in the South, okay? There are so many bugs and animals and critters that like are chittering and making noises at night. They just stop. It gets like eerily quiet. And the people who are already there, they like stop for a second and they're just like looking around. Everyone like just like pauses, because when you're used to hearing like all that ambient noise and then it just completely goes away, it's startling. So I got the door open. I got one foot in the car still, one foot out of the car. And the guy like is like, come on, let's go. I'm just like, okay. So I get out of the car and I'm out there for like 5 minutes and I'm feeling uneasy, but I'm trying to like push it down. But because I'm feeling uneasy, I'm not participating in like the drinking and smoking. So everything's good. Everyone's like laughing and dancing, and they're playing like music from a speaker, and they're all drinking and smoking and stuff. I'm getting to know like new people. So the speaker that they're playing music on, it just dies. And then we hear like a really weird, like loud noise coming from the woods. We hear a really weird noise. I don't exactly know how to describe it, but right after that noise, we hear what sounds like chains. It sounds like someone's like jangling chains, and it's echoing through the whole woods. We're surrounded by the woods. Like there's woods all around us, and then there's just the street that we came on. So you can hear it echoing around us, like the chains are like surrounding us. I'm like, nope. I get in my car and I sit in my car. I stay in my car while they're out there doing stuff. They stay out there for like an hour. I'm in my car, strolling on my phone. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Snapchat, and suddenly I just hear screaming, and everybody runs to their cars. Everybody runs to the car. They get in my car. They're like, go. I'm like trying to get my keys. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I'm like, what's happening? They're like, just drive. So we're driving. And as we're driving, I'm like, what's going on? What happened? And they were like, we heard people. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yes, we heard people. And then it sounded like people just running towards us, like just people running to us. We could hear them. So that happens, right? A couple weeks pass. Everything's fine. And then things weren't fine. Things started going like weird in my dorm room. And at the time, I didn't know this, but weird stuff wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to all my roommates. So in my dorm room, it was 4 of us. Okay, me and my best friend, we shared a dorm room, and then there were 2 other girls. One girl, it was a black girl. She was super spiritual, and the other girl, she was white, and she was like very hardcore Christian. So weird stuff was happening to all of us, but we weren't communicating it with each other. One of the weird things that happened to me and my boyfriend, we were sleeping in the living room, because whenever he was my boyfriend at this time. Now, so we're in the living room sleeping, and I have a really bad dream. I like sit up, because I'm about to get a sip of water, and I look over to the corner and I see like this shadow, like this dark shadow just like glooming towards us. Like, I don't know how to describe where a head would be. It was like turned like that to us, and we're sleeping like on the floor on like the sleeping bags. So I scream, and my boyfriend wakes up, and he's like, what's going on? And I was like, I saw something. And he looks at me, and he was just like, what did you see? And I tell him. And so we stay up and we like watch like funny movies to try to lift the mood. And then, the next day he tells me, I didn't want to freak you out even more, but like I had a nightmare. Like right when you screamed, I was having like a terrible nightmare. And he was like, I actually been having like nightmares every night I stay in your dorm room. And then he was like, I think I'm gonna sleep in my own dorm room for a while. So like he didn't sleep in my dorm room for like a couple of weeks after that happened. So things were happening. My best friend, she would be in the dorm room when I went to class, and she'd be the only one in there because she had a different schedule than the rest of us. And she said that the door, and our doors were heavy. These are really heavy doors. She said she would have the door closed and it would just swing open and then close again. Swing open, close again randomly. She got so scared that she ended up going to she would go to the cafe when no one else was in the dorm room because she was so scared to be by herself in the dorm room. We had stuff on our walls. It wouldn't fall. It would be like thrown across the room. How does something hanging up on a wall, like our lights, like our little Christmas lights, it wouldn't just fall, thrown across the room. Lights would flicker. Cabinets would open. And one day, me and my best friend, we were like sitting there eating, and we were talking about it. And the spiritual girl and her boyfriend, they walk in, they hear us talking about it, and they're like, weird stuff has been happening to you guys too? I'm like, yeah. And they tell us the stuff that's been happening. And then her boyfriend was like, yeah, one night we were out in the living room and she was asleep, and I look over and I see like this dark shadow, and I'm just like, I saw the exact same thing. So he gets oil, he starts anointing and praying over it. He's like, yeah, we got to get whatever's in here out of here. So he's praying, he's pulling out the works, okay? He's blessing every room, putting crosses over every door. And while he's doing this, our other roommate walks in and she freaks out. She completely freaks out. She packs up all her stuff. I don't know why. I still don't know why to this day she went crazy. She packs up her stuff, she leaves, she never comes back. Never comes back. So it was good for a while. But then the spiritual girl, like her boyfriend, stopped coming to the dorm room because he got a job. So he wasn't sleeping there. When he stopped coming, things started getting bad again. So fast forward, things are getting weird again. Stuff is starting to happen. Me and my friend, we put a Bible on the desk and we leave it open because we're like, that's how scared we are. We're sleeping and we just hear the Bible, boom, close. And we're like, oh, hell no. No. So we're in theater class and we're talking about this. And this girl hears us. She hears us from across the room. She walks over to us and she says, I did not want to scare you guys, but for the last like month and a half, I have felt like this dark presence around you guys. And she was like, I can feel like this dark presence like around y'all. And we were like, what? And she was like, I don't want to freak you guys out, but like I can, like I'm really like spiritually tapped in. And she was like, can I come to your dorm room and see what's going on? And we're like, sure. So we tell our friends what's going on. So our friends that were at the graveyard, they come too because they want to see what's going on, because when they would come over and we would have like game nights and stuff, weird stuff would happen as well. So we walk into the dorm room. She comes in last. As soon as she comes in the room, like she steps over the threshold into the room, the lights flicker. Like, and I'm not talking about like, no, I'm like, like the lights are flickering, going crazy. And she's a white girl. She has really like dark red hair. We can see the hair on her arms just like stand up. Like we could see it. We could see the hair on the backs of her neck. She just got like chills all over her entire body. And she was like, there's a spirit here. And she was like, this spirit is not happy that I'm in this room. So she's like going through the entire dorm room, right? And she gets to my bed, my side of the dorm room, and the doors, both doors, our room door and our other roommate's room doors, open and close, open and close, open and close. At this point, everyone's like screaming, freaking out. And she starts talking to the spirit and she's like, I know you're scared, but you need to calm down. Like, you're okay, calm down. And then everything just stops and it just feels so calm. And she's like talking to the spirit and we're just like we're looking. And she's like, okay, we need to get her back. And we're like, what? Get who back? And she was like, you need to take her back to her gravesite. And we were like, what? So we all get in the car, we take her back to the gravesite, and she finds this unmarked grave, and she puts her spirit. So there's no way the girl from theater class would have known about the graveyard situation because we didn't talk at all in class. That was the first time we had ever interacted with her, was when she said she felt bad energy around us. And so when she was like, we need to take her back to the gravesite, me and my boyfriend and our two friends that were there that was with us that night when we were at the graveyard, we all stopped and we looked at each other. My best friend, she didn't know about it. I didn't tell her about it because I knew she would be like, you're dumb for going to like a graveyard. Like, what? So she didn't know about it, and so she was like, what gravesite? What are you talking about? So we tell them everything that happened that night at the graveyard, and we get in the car, and she's like, yeah, we need to go put her to rest. So we get in the car, and while we're on our way to the gravesite, she's talking to the spirit in the car. We get to the gravesite, and we're like, okay, what's the girl's name so we can find her headstone and put her to rest and be done with this? And the girl from theater's like, just follow me. So she starts walking through the graveyard, and she walks past all the headstones. And she starts walking into the woods, and we follow her. We just follow her. What else are we gonna do? So she goes deep into the woods. I would say we were walking for like 10 minutes, so it was pretty far back. When we get there, we get to an unmarked grave. She kneels down, and she's talking to the spirit. And she's like, guys, give me some space. And then as she's talking to the spirit, she just starts like crying uncontrollably, like she's sobbing. And she's like holding her hand over her mouth. She's like she's getting really stressed out. And so I guess she put the spirit to rest or whatever. And she turns back and she comes to us and she's like, guys, I'm so sorry I made a mistake. And she was like, we were like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean you made a mistake? She was like, I thought there was just one spirit in that dorm room, but there was two. At this point, my boyfriend and like all of our friends, they're all like, this is starting to get this is going above our head a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we need to get some help. So we get in the car and we head back to the dorm room. So as we're in the car, she tells us that the spirit of the little girl was telling her about her life, and she was like, there was a man who tormented her whole life, and he unalived her. And the little girl was like, even now he's been tormenting me. And she was like, what I think happened is that night when you guys were at the graveyard, her spirit tried to get away from him by attaching onto you. And she points to me. And she was like, when she attached to you, she thinks that his spirit, his dark evil spirit, followed us into the car, followed us back to our dorm room. And so she's like, we need to get him out of your dorm room. So we stop by her room and she gets like all the supplies. She's getting salt. She has like sage. She has like holy water. And she's like, we need to get him out. So we go back to our dorm room. At this point, it's getting dark. My friend, we pull up to the room. My friend opens the door. When we open the door, there's like stuff everywhere. Like, it looked like someone was just throwing stuff against the wall. And we noticed that all the stuff that was like being thrown was in that same corner that me and the spiritual girl's boyfriend saw like this dark figure. So we walk into the room, and as soon as we walk into the room, the girl from theater screams and she falls backwards. And we all whip our heads around it. You can see it. Like, I would not believe it if I weren't there. I would not believe it. We turn and like just a millisecond, you can see it look like you can see her hair like someone grabbed her hair and pulled her backwards. And we're like, oh my God, no, we're done. Come on, it's Friday. We can just go somewhere else. We're not going to sleep here this weekend. And she's like, no, I'm fine. She gets up. She gets up. She gets the salt. She gives me the salt. Me and my boyfriend, everyone who is in the room that was at the graveyard, she gives them salt and she tells us to go and throw it around the room, throw it around my bed, throw it into the corner especially. So we're doing it, we're throwing it. And as we're like going around the room, when we get to that corner where we keep seeing that dark figure, the lights start flickering. Then she's like, she gets the sage, she starts saging. And we're scared because the more that she saged, the more intense the lights start flickering. because the more that she sages, the more like the atmosphere in the room just felt so heavy. Like it felt, you could feel the pressure in the room. Like it was just, the energy was so thick, you could cut it with like a knife. And so after she saged, and during all this, the lights are still flickering. And then finally she gets the holy water and she gives it to me. And during this time period, I didn't know, I was barely 18. I didn't know anything about any of this kind of stuff. So I'm looking at her like, why are you giving this to me? And she's like, it has to be you. And I'm scared. Like my hands are literally shaking. At this point, everyone is really scared. Everyone's scared. My boyfriend's scared. No one wants to be there. The vibes are not good. And so she's telling me to like use the holy water and to tell him to get out. And so I get it and I do like a little get out. And she's like, no, you need to like command him. Like you need to tell him to get out and leave, that we do not want you here. So I'm getting a little braver. I get the water and I throw it and I say, get out. You are not welcome here. And when I say that, we have like a mirror in our common area. It's like a medicine cabinet where we keep like all of our toothbrushes and stuff because there's a sink there. When I say that, the medicine cabinet door swings open so hard that it breaks the glass. And at this point, I'm like, I want to go. And the girl from theater class is like literally holding me, telling me, no, you have to tell him to leave. You cannot leave or he will stay. And so I'm throwing it. I'm saying like, leave, get out of here. My friend, she's freaked out. She's completely freaked out. She starts crying and my boyfriend starts like freaking out. He's like, nah, we need to get out of here. And then as I'm like throwing the holy water, the girl starts like praying really hard. And then all the power in the entire dorm building goes off. The lights are out. There's no power in the building. And then I wouldn't believe it if I was not there. As soon as she finishes the prayer, the lights come back on. And you could feel the shift in the atmosphere instantly. And then she just calmly, she goes to the door. She opens the door to our room and she says, leave. And I'm assuming it left because after that, we never had a single problem. Never had a single problem. But we literally never talked about that again. We never talked about that again because it started out so like, you know, when these things happen, you're like, oh my God, like it's like a joke. It's like a game. But it just got serious so fast that we just didn't talk about it. We never talked about it again. Never. Me and my best friend, we don't even talk about it anymore. Moral of the story, don't learn from my mistakes. Don't go party in a graveyard. Don't do that. Don't do that.
There is so much to unpack in this. I honestly don't even know where to start. Like, it is insane to me that, first of all these roommates were having separate experiences before realizing that they were all experiencing the same thing. And then to have a random girl from theater class, like, know what's going on and just, like, talk to them about it. Like, to me, that would be equally as frightening, that someone can, like, just get from my vibe that there's something attached to me. I don't even know what you would say in that instance. That would be so scary. I also find it so interesting that when one of the boyfriends was there all the time, that things would kind of calm down, and the conclusion that it was an evil man spirit, I wonder if it was kind of like a respect thing. I mean, I don't really know how much like demons respect anyone, but I wonder if it was like kind of a respect thing with it being a man, but also at the same time, if the other girl's boyfriend was there a lot and experienced a lot of stuff, like I wonder what it was with this one specific guy that the energy or that the activity would slow down around him. But again, I cannot believe how these like college kids are doing a full-blown like exorcism by themselves, and the fact that they were able to successfully do it is crazy to me, and I am so glad that they were able to get that out of there. Like, what a story. I mean, she at the beginning prefaces like I was stupid, as in like I was dumb, I should have known better than to go into a cemetery. You know, maybe yeah, partying in a cemetery is disrespectful, but honestly, I don't think there should be any reason like why you should think that you're dumb for going into a cemetery, because like, you know, how many people go into a cemetery to visit their loved ones daily and they don't have random paranormal events happening after that? So I really think it was just kind of a series of unfortunate events. It wasn't, you know, like being dumb and choosing to play the Ouija board as a kid. It was like, yeah, okay, you went to go party in a cemetery, but there really is no reason why, unless you were like jumping on graves and trying to disrespect people intentionally, there's no reason why anything should have been attached. So I feel like it's not really on the poster here. It's kind of a series of unfortunate events and a tale to be cautious, I guess, when entering potentially haunted sites such as a cemetery. Our final TikTok of the video was by the user Marco J. Williams, and he shares a story about when he was a kid staying at his grandma's house. He shares that she had a doll room when he was growing up, and he found it very creepy. So one night when he had to use a bathroom when he was staying there, he was very scared to go out into the hallway to go to the bathroom. When he finally works up the courage, he realizes he was right to be scared because he sees a giant shadowy figure down at the end of the hallway near the doll room.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I used to think my grandmother's house was haunted. When I was younger, my cousin and I would always go to Pittsburgh to visit my grandma's house in the summertime. Now, my grandma had this room called the doll room. It was filled with all the porcelain dolls she collected because she said they'd be worth some money in the future. Now this room creeped me out. I never wanted to sleep in it. So my cousin and I always slept in a room down the hallway from it. I remember one night we were watching this Disney Channel show called So Weird. If you remember this show, you had an amazing childhood. This was an OG lineup. We had the Jersey, the famous Jet Jackson, and So Weird. But I digress. There was this one episode of So Weird on that creeped me out to the point where I wanted to go to the bathroom, but I was scared that something was in the hallway. And I was right. When I finally mustered up the courage to go to the bathroom, there was this shadowy figure standing right next to the doll room. I ended up running back into the bedroom and hid under the covers because that always protects us. Now fast forward to 2020, I had this very surreal dream that took me back to that night. Only this time, I was standing at the other end of the hallway next to the doll room, looking at my younger self run into the bathroom and back into the other room. And then I woke up. This dream made me realize that I was my own ghost, and time does not move the way that we think, and I had the ability to astral project.
That is such a crazy story, like different in a crazy sense than a lot of the others. It's obviously less paranormal and more like Glitch in the Matrix-y. It really is an interesting concept. And there's another story that very similar that I can't remember if I've already included in a video or if it's like in the queue for me to film a video with this tick-tock in it. But it is very similar to another story that I've heard recently. And it kind of opens doorways to like an interesting conversation of, like he said, time being not linear and maybe being able to see your younger self. It's hard to fully wrap my mind around it, but at the same time, again, I'm a little, my ideas sometimes are a little out there, I will admit, but I really can get on board with the idea that, maybe time really isn't linear. And I personally believe that we can jump timelines at free will with our own minds and change exactly how we want our lives to be, aka, the science behind manifestation. So in that sense, the concept of time really isn't linear. You can decide that you have something and then actually have it in real life the next day, even if realistically, logically speaking, it should have taken you years to get it. So, don't mind me like rambling about my craziness, but I really think that this is a good example of that. And it is so interesting to see people's experiences with that. But that is all I have for today's video. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know if you want me to do another one of these where I share stitches from the original poster of this trend. I really enjoy these stories. I think they're all so interesting, and it really shows you how, while there are so many people that have had paranormal experiences, they're all so different. Like it's like there is an infinite amount of possibilities when it comes to the paranormal and crazy experiences. So I really cannot get enough of these. I never skip one when I see it. So if you guys would like me to do another video, I will happily do it for you. But let me know which your favorite story was, any thoughts you have on any of the stories I did share. And other than that, if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you did like it, I will have a couple suggestions popping up here in a second. And please be sure to click the subscribe button down below or right here and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.